We spend so much of our lives chasing calm, hoping that once we finally feel peaceful, everything else will fall into place. But what if inner peace isn't the destination? What if it's the starting point for how we live, serve, and show up in the world? Today's conversation is about harmony as a way of being and how calm can naturally evolve into purpose. Welcome to Healing Horizons, the space where we explore what healing really looks like when it's lived, not just understood. I'm Archita, and today I'm joined by Robin Clare, author of Harmony, The Frequency of True Success, and creator of the Harmony Method. Robin brings a deeply human perspective on recovery, alignment, and purpose, shaped by her own healing journey and her work in service and leadership. In this episode, we're exploring how inner peace can become outer purpose and how harmony can be built into daily life in practical, grounded ways. So, Robin, welcome to Healing Horizon. I am really glad that you're here today.
Thank you, Archita. I'm so glad to be here.
Amazing. So, Robin, before we talk about methods or frameworks, I'd love to start here. When you look back on your journey, what did harmony mean to you before healing, and how has that definition changed through lived experience?
Yes. So when I first received the guidance to what these words were, so the words of the harmony method are awareness, commitment, mastery, service, leadership, and freedom. I thought that, geez, that sounds like the 6 steps to spiritual success. Like, that's what because I was a spiritual teacher, I thought I was being given, like, the fast track to becoming highly spiritual. But at the same time that was happening, the same time that I was receiving that, I was also still in, addiction to, food disorders, and I always on some level, felt almost like a poser in my spiritual teachings because I'm like, "How could I be taken seriously if I'm also an addict?" And so, what I then came to realize is that those 6 steps apply to any part of your life. They apply to healing, creativity, relationships, money management, social justice. And so what I started to do is apply the teachings, those 6 steps, to my healing journey. And um and it made me come to the realization that it brought me to a state of harmony. So so that's how it happened for me. It wasn't like, oh, like I'm like, "Oh, harmony. Let me figure out how to do that." It was a lived experience of doing my own healing work and then also after that, moving into a nonprofit organization, and then my leadership style became also the following of this path, because to me, it's a universal path to create a sense of harmony in your life and success.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The way you navigated through all of that to find your own healing journey and to find what really works for you. I think that's beautiful. And Robin, I'm curious about something that many people struggle with. There's often this belief that harmony or inner peace means life becomes easier, conflict free. But from your experience, what do people tend to misunderstand about harmony?
Well, I think even the whole, the life path, nothing really is easy about being a spiritual being in a human being body, right? Because being a human being is not easy. But what if we could create ease instead of easy? Like, working through the path of harmony, the 6 elements of harmony provides a sense of ease. And I think that's that we could ask for, which is not to say that it's not a great thing. I think ease is, I'll take ease, right? Because ease means that you're in alignment between your inner world and your outer world, right? Your things come with ease and you just take care of all the things you have to do. So life doesn't get easier. It just is filled with ease.
Yeah, I loved how you made that difference between easy and ease. And I think that's really important. And that brings me to the question, what happens when someone expects harmony to remove struggle instead of teaching them how to relate to it differently?
Yes. So I this is my 5th book, and my 4th book was about struggle struggle, basically. So my 4th book was called Feast and Famine: Healing Addiction with Grace, and basically it says there's a very common, 2 terms in spiritual teachings, that pain is inevitable and suffering is an option. And so, there's 4 steps, in the feast and famine, which is pain is inevitable. Like, we are going to have pain in our lives. We are mind, body, spirit, and emotion, and and not only that, we have all these different ways and places in our life where we could be in pain, but there's also other people in our lives and in this world. And so we're constantly bombarded with opportunities to be in pain. But the question is, uh, are we going to suffer? And so suffering is an option. Just because you're in pain doesn't mean that suffering follows. You can figure out in your life how uh, to understand the pain, heal it, and so that you're not suffering. And then so we had pain is inevitable, suffering is an option. The next is, if you're still struggling, surrender is required. You must be able to surrender what you're struggling over, which means give it up. Like, just say, "I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I am really done." So surrender itself is not wishful thinking. It's truly when you've had enough about what you're struggling with, and you then want to move on to the 4th step, which is grace must be allowed. And that's the most difficult step for folks. They don't understand that grace is available to each of us 24/7. We're receiving so much grace in our lives every day, but because we're still struggling, we can't see it. And so we have to be willing to allow it into our lives and feel that we're worthy of it. So just to repeat those 4 steps is pain is inevitable, suffering is an option, surrender is required, and grace must be allowed.
Wow, that was so powerful. I loved how you just said, I'm going to use this quote forever. I think that pain is inevitable and suffering is a choice. That,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that book.
Yeah, I don't think we know that, right? Like, I don't think that people know that pain doesn't necessarily equate to suffering.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, suffering is at the end of the day a choice. So definitely, and it sounds like harmony isn't about escaping life's challenges, but learning how to stay aligned while moving through them. That really
Yeah, I agree with you. Harmony is the alignment of your inner world and your outer uh endeavors, right? Your outer purpose, because you if you are finding a way to surrender your suffering, right? And you're really working on yourself and you come to this place of inner peace and calm, as you mentioned earlier, I think what I'd like to do is just go over one more time the 6 steps, in the harmony method, so that people have a greater understanding of what they are. And the example I typically do is, is is how I wrote the book is a good way of showing those. So, I know that I've lived those I lived my healing journey, and I was very, very committed to it. And so then I realized, that I needed to write a book about it, my next book, which is harmony. So the first one is awareness. So somewhere deep inside of myself at the soul level, I knew I became aware that I needed to write this book. And so what I did next is commitment, which is the next step. I committed to writing this book, and it was a big commitment. Every day for a year, I put an hour on my calendar, and I committed to writing this book. The third step is mastery. And this was the hardest one for me because even though I wrote the book, I needed to embody the teachings, right? They needed to become part of who I am so that I could do the next outward facing. So the first 3 are in almost internal, right? Awareness, commitment, mastery. The next one begins the external, right? The outer, and that is service. And so once I embodied the teachings of the book, I was able to then be of service. And that's what I'm doing now right here on your podcast, right? I'm teaching. I'm teaching these teachings that I received from the divine realm. And so, service, I'm being of service. The next one, which is also outward facing, is leadership, which is the idea of leading by example. I There's nothing more than I love to hear when people say, "Boy, you're very calm, Robin. You're very peaceful. You're, wow, you live those teachings, right?" So now I'm sharing them as a leader. I'm being the I'm self-leadership. I'm walking the walk, but then I'm out in the world in trying to be in harmony. And then the last one is freedom. And that is the actual alignment of my inner world and my outer world so that my life is more joyful and more I don't know, I have a sense of presence uh and ease. And so you can see that freedom is not, oh, I don't have anything, I have nothing to do. It's about taking what you've healed in your inner world and bringing it out into your outside world so that you're in alignment. And so the alignment is the freedom that you don't have to be one person inside and one person outside. It's a sense of alignment and it brings you a sense of freedom because you're not worried about who you are and what you're doing. And so all of that creates a frequency in your life, which is harmony. And that's why I call it the frequency of true success, because living those 6 steps could, as I shared, could be for any part of your life.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Robin. I mean, those steps that you've just shared, it's really helpful. So yeah, that reframing alone feels incredibly freeing. So thanks once again.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So Robin, moving on, your healing journey spans decades, and it led you through the 6 elements of the harmony method that you just mentioned. So let's stay with that for a moment. What do you see as the deeper pattern beneath behaviors like obsessive eating or chronic striving?
Yes. So it's something we talked about. It's suffering. Um, what what I think that's at the core of all addiction, is that in Feast and Famine, I talk about that what the guidance that I received is that when there's really only one addiction on this planet, one true addiction, major addiction, and that is to suffering. And suffering is created by unhealed trauma that we've experienced in past lives, if you believe that, and also in our lifetime. We have been impacted traumatically by what our parents said and did to us, what our siblings, our friends, our lovers, our bosses, the world, our government, right? Our 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 health. Like there's so many opportunities to suffer. And so to me, we continue to suffer. It's the addiction. And then what we do is we create or look for secondary addictions to feel better from the suffering. So we might start drinking, we might start eating too much, watching porn, um, staying in a shitty relationship or a bad job, or cigarettes, right? Those things make us feel better for our suffering. And so the way to eliminate both is to look at why are you suffering? So to me, that's what's underneath all of this struggle is the suffering.
No, that makes so much sense. I mean, I have seen so many people, like you said, addicted to suffering, and be it a bad job or a shitty relationship or any of the other addictions. But why do you think that so many of us are addicted to suffering? Like you said, is it because that's all we've ever known, or because we think that we deserve it?
I think it's I think it's we've known a lot of it and it is I think on the human level it's really what all we've ever really known or that's a hard way of saying because we all have known love and joy, right? And peace on some things, but not as much as we've known suffering, right? And because the people in our lives, we may be on the journey of healing, Archita, but if you think about your family and friends, many of them are not, right? And so they're putting out their suffering when they're conversing with you. And so one of the things I try to remember is that when someone else is being mean to me or that, it's typically their own trauma patterns, right? They're not they're not necessarily trying to hurt me. They're just so full of hurt that when they say their words, they can be hurtful. So I think that you have to do the work of releasing the suffering. And the only way to do that is to know what your trauma patterns were, work with a professional to understand them, and then let them go. They won't go away. The memories don't go away, but the emotional charge around them will.
Definitely, definitely. And I think it also comes from a place of conditioning. And yeah, so on that note, many listeners might recognize themselves in what you're describing, even if their struggle looks different. So, how does living out of alignment tend to show up in everyday life, especially for people who appear successful on the outside?
Yeah, because they don't really feel successful. I think I shared that I was a spiritual teacher, still am, but I was in addiction. And so every day I hadn't healed my trauma. So I was suffering on the inside, but teaching others not to suffer on the out, not to suffer. So I always felt like I was almost like a fraud or contradicting myself, and I think that's the conflict, like, who are we on the inside? We can be extremely successful on the outside, but are we do we feel successful on the inside? And so you have to heal your inner world so that you can feel as equally successful on the inner world as your outer world so that you can create alignment and live in harmony.
Yeah, that's so true. But what were some subtle signs in your life that told you harmony was missing even before you had language for it?
Oh, well, for me, that I never for me, it was I am a divine messenger, so I receive messages from the divine realm to share with others, and up until this book and up because that's when my healing was really complete, I I never felt, confident enough to teach this information, but now I do. Now I there's a state of harmony between my inner world and my outer world, and I can joyfully share this information but before I was always like, you know, like, "Who are you to do this?" But not anymore. Now this I'm in a whole different phase, and so because there's the alignment of my healed inner world with my external way that I share information.
Yeah,
That's the difference. That's the difference is that I can back up what I'm saying externally with how I feel internally.
exactly. And that gap between outer functioning and inner disconnection feels like something that so many people silently carry, but you overcame it and you're teaching others overcome it as well. And yeah, I think that's really amazing. And Robin, let's talk about moving from calm to calling. Once someone begins to experience inner steadiness, how does that naturally evolve into service or purpose without forcing it?
Well, I think the inner calm allows you to really hear what your soul is looking for you to accomplish in this lifetime. So I want to be clear that it's not always write spiritual books and talk spiritual things just because my soul asked me to do that, right? That's my soul. Other people's soul could ask them to be the best parent they could be because they're raising a very special child or to become a nurse or a doctor or they have another calling. So I think it's a matter of really getting to understand your life on the soul level and what is your soul here to do. So, one of the things I share with folks is to every day have a journal or something to write in and ask the same question every day. What does my soul want me to do today? Or what does my soul want me to know today? And that little piece of information guides you forward for an everyday present moment perspective of living and understanding what your soul wants to accomplish in this lifetime. And as you do that, you find that if you are still suffering, that's not going to work. You've got to get out of the suffering so that you can continue to heal in peace. And once you've done that, you'll have a better idea of how to take this new energy that you have inside of yourself and bring it into whatever you're doing on the outside. You just become that. You become the harmony.
Wow, that was powerful. That is really helpful as well, Robin. And I love how, purpose here doesn't sound like pressure, it sounds like expression, something that unfolds when alignment is present. And once you have dealt with all the suffering inside of you, you can kindly be on your inner healing journey. And yeah, you become the harmony, like you just said. So, lastly, Robin, for someone listening right now, what's one simple way they can begin practicing harmony in their daily rhythm, not as another task, but as a way of being?
Yeah. One of my favorite ways is to practice the pause. And so, people come at us with things that make us annoyed or mad. And as I shared earlier, it's typically they're not directing it at you. It's really about them, something going on with them. So, one of the things I've learned to not disrupt my own harmony is to practice the pause, meaning that if you were to say something to me that was hurtful, before I respond to you, I pause and I take a few breaths, and that readjusts my emotional system, my nervous system, and then I'm able to respond to you in a way that is more harmonious. For example, I might say to you, "Wow, it sounds like you're upset. Is there something I can do to help?" Versus, "F you for saying that to me," right? Go to go to hell, right? Like, no, if I take the time to breathe and stay in my own harmony and I see that they're really upset, then I can say, "What can I do to help? Is there something I can do to help?" It disarms them and it makes you and it enables you to stay in harmony.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Robin. And for anyone listening who feels tired of striving, I'll ask this gently. What might change if you trusted that harmony is already within you, waiting to be remembered rather than achieved? Harmony isn't something we earn through effort, it's our natural state. And when we return to it, purpose flows organically into how we live and serve. So, Robin, for listeners who feel drawn to this work, where can they learn more about you and the Harmony method?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to go to my website, Harmony with Robin, Robin, Harmony with Robin, and they'll find all kinds of stuff on there, ways to free stuff to learn from, and then also ways to engage with me as a coach or a mentor.
Great, great. So I'll have all the details on my show listing, and our listeners can feel free to connect with you whenever and however they want. Thank you for being a part of Healing Horizons. If today's conversation resonated, take a moment to sit with it, not to fix anything, but to listen inwardly. Harmony begins within, and from there, it ripples outward. Until next time, take care of your inner world and trust that it knows the way forward.